Sure.
Like my back hurts thinking of 2 laptops, and I'll tell you how ridiculous it is that I have a MacBook Pro that I also carry with a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Like, that's ridiculous. I think everyone would like to know why you've got 3 laptops.
Well, my second machine is essentially your iPad, right? So
Yeah.
I've got a very beefy like Windows laptop that everyone makes fun of because it's got this like really massive brick of a power adapter.
Yeah.
Then I've got a very lightweight, like $300-400 like Windows machine again, and a MacBook. And I would say like honestly, like the MacBook is usually preferable, but there's like weird, like sometimes weird issues with it. And then the last one, like the very lightweight laptop, like for example, when I'd go to a Kraft Heinz site, they would just give me access to their VMs, right? So I wouldn't need necessarily the bulky laptop that has all the engineering software. So you can just virtualize and connect to their servers. But if not, as you know, not everything's on the network. So you show up and you like actually plug in. I don't know.
So what you're saying is that the MacBook is for the look, right?
I mean, if
you see, he's got the beard coming in. He's got the beard coming in. He needs to be able to go to the coffee shop with the MacBook, Zach.
That's right. That's right. But a lot of engineers actually like MacBooks. It's an interesting thing that, you know, in the past I would say anti Mac OS, but once you try it and like see how well things seem to run, it's pretty nice because you don't get the, you know, the updates of the OS don't impact your virtual machines that much, and like everything just seems to work. And actually, like Sean Thorell is a big supporter of Macs as well, as a side note. So me and him talked about that extensively.
He told me that the best laptop he owns that he runs Windows on is a MacBook.
Right. Yeah, because you spin off parallels and like things just work. You know what I mean? Like
that's why I'm currently streaming on a Mac, is because things just work. Unless I update everything 30 minutes before we're supposed to go live, and then nothing works. But when I don't do something stupid 30 minutes before we go live, things just work. Cool. But no,
Dave,
Zach,
I don't see you live.
You don't see me live?
I do not.
I see myself live. Showing? Well, Vlad looks for me, Zach. Typically, the first couple of minutes, we let some folks come in and we do some community comments thing. And so as I start the community comments every week, Solus PLC has now crushed. I think we're like past 21,000 subscribers, which is Vlad's channel. We are on the push because Vlad's not going to push it. We're on the push for a silver play button up there in the top left-hand corner of the screen. So we want to ask everyone to subscribe to Solus PLC if you guys have not done so. And I actually have some exciting news that I just realized while we were getting ready to go live. We have hit more than 100 subscribers on the Manufacturing Hub page, which is really cool. All right. Honestly, the last time I looked, we were like 60, and we've had a big push. And Zach, you're here, so we get to blame it all on you. So thank you very much for that, Zach. Let's see.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you. So if you guys are following along, if you haven't been following along for a while, we have at least the first 14 episodes and the next couple upcoming of the podcast in podcast form at manufacturinghub.live. And then if you guys are watching, Vlad and I have been talking about capturing emails and sending out notifications with all of the stream links, because we get a lot of people say, man, I really wish we got notifications for you. And we're over here thinking partially to ourselves, that's something that we never have said in the past. But if people would like to be notified when we go live, please let us know. And please let us know. Go to manufacturinghub.live. There should be a section to drop your email in there. And I think starting next week, we will send out reminders with the links as to all of the places that you can find us. And Tim Wilborn says that would be helpful. Put me on the list. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate the feedback. We will absolutely get you on the list. I think that's about all we have at the moment. Vlad, do you have anything else you want to add?
I was going to mention, I guess, on that same point, the idea is also to send some of the links that our guests are mentioning during the stream. And I think, we'll get certainly better at it, but we do post them on the website. And I guess just personal preference, I'd rather have like an email condensed version that would, outline where to find certain items versus going through either like re-listening the podcast or going back on the website. So that's kind of the idea of the list as well. Other than that, no, Dave. I think actually, so Chris Lukey hosts the weekly discussions as well on Tuesday. That we've, I believe you went to the previous one, and I went to the one before that. So, do you want to plug it a little bit?
Yeah,
What's the
so
time,
if
date?
you guys are not familiar with Chris Lukey and Manufacturing Happy Hour, he was the guest on here, episode 16 or 17 a few weeks ago. He does a bunch of great things. He's got a great podcast that he puts out in podcast form, and he is hosting a 6-part episode of, I believe Chris is calling it Beyond the Buzzwords. It is Tuesday at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'm not in Eastern Standard Time, so I'm trying to do the conversions. I believe it's 5:30 Eastern Standard Time on the Industry 4.0 Clubhouse Club, or Industry 4.0 Club Clubhouse room. If you guys are interested, Chris will tell you to go to manufacturinghappyhour.com/community. And thank you, Chris, for plugging that enough times the last time we got together for me to remember it. Next week, last week we talked about cybersecurity. It was a really good show. This week coming up, we're going to talk about AR and VR, which I think should be a very good show. And I think I've got a couple of people who work in the space coming to that, and it should be good. It was a really good hour or so when I had to jump off yesterday. You guys should absolutely check it out. More people talking about this than one would normally expect, which is always a good thing.
Dave, do you want to kick us off with this episode?
Absolutely. So everyone, welcome to Manufacturing Hub with me, Dave, and this guy over on the other side of me, Vlad. We are on episode 19. I'm sure most of you didn't think we would make it there. I'm not sure we thought we would make it there. We have a very special guest today. As you can probably see him smiling if you guys are watching live, Zach Stank of Phoenix Contact. And we were having some conversations, and you know what, let's just go ahead and jump in, because this is, I think, going to be a very different episode than the previous episode. So Zach, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Vlad. I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad I'm very special, not just regular special.
You are very special. You
That's
are
what my mom always told me.
That's good. That's good. See, we're helping to reinforce that for children of all ages. But no, thank you so much for coming aboard, Zach. And as you were describing to Vlad and I, can you give us a little bit of your background, talk about what you did before Phoenix Contact and what you guys at Phoenix are doing now? Because it's so much more than I think many of us realize.
Yeah, sure. And that's a pretty, I'll try to paint in a really broad stroke here because I don't take the entire time going through my history, but I'm a trained chemical engineer. I went to the Pennsylvania State University, graduated with my BS back in 2008. Job market wasn't great back in 2008, at least here in the States. I don't know for you guys, but it wasn't awesome. The only thing that was going on was basically the troop surge in Afghanistan, I believe, at that time. And so I found work at a defense contractor, and I started there doing quality inspection and first article tests of different vehicles for the Army, for Navy SEALs. It's basically all the MRAP program, if you're familiar with anything military. If not, that's okay. I can throw all the initializations at you, and that I don't know that it'll mean anything. But I did that for about 3 years, and then I joined Phoenix Contact in 2011 as a safety specialist for the marketing group here in the U.S. We're based out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I was a safety specialist for about 8.5 years, and now I'm transitioning into the product marketing manager for control, safety, and I/O. So not just safety anymore. We're also, I'm talking about control. Of course, our PLCNext, which you can see. I got the PLCNext shirt on. We got the PLCNext sitting in the corner, hanging out over here. and then all of our great IO products, especially AxioLine SE that just launched earlier this year. So we got a lot of, like you said, Dave, a ton of great stuff happening at Phoenix Contact on our automation side.
We really appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Zach, I've got many questions. Obviously, that's a very, short bio, I feel, of the extensive many years. But I want to start at the beginning, right? So you've graduated with a chemical engineering background.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, how did the transition into a marketing role took place? What kind of maybe interests drove that? What kind of, like, obviously, like the career shift or the company somewhat influenced that, but what passions did you have that like influenced that change?
That's a good question, because it is a dynamic leap, I would say, from engineering to marketing, especially chemical engineering. So when I was in high school, I always wanted to be a teacher, and all of my teachers told me not to be a teacher, which was kind of disheartening. But one of my teachers, my chemistry teacher, Mr. Leuchner, I don't think he's watching this. I don't know why he would be, but if he ever does watch this, he's the one that inspired me to go to chemical engineering, because he said it was the hardest thing I could do. So I went to school to do the hardest thing I could do. I had my eye on nanotechnology and renewables and things like that. And like I said, when I got out, wasn't a great job market, so I went into defense, where I could get, cut my teeth as an engineer, work in quality, do a lot of the drawing stuff that I had never done before, get some experience. And then actually my wife's colleague was friends with somebody at Phoenix Contact, and they were having a job fair. And so I showed up to the job fair with my best suit and tie right from work. So I, unshowered, really sweaty, but in a suit and tie. And there was 400 other people there. And I don't know if you guys have ever visited Phoenix Contact Harrisburg. It's a wonderful facility. We've expanded a lot. The lobby probably holds comfortably maybe 200 people. And there were
also the career fair was at the facility.
So it was at the facility, yeah.
Nice.
And the strangest thing that I've ever seen in my life, coming from defense, it's all about timing and getting things right, and it's a very high stress environment, to Phoenix Contact, where employees were staying after hours to do a career fair, and everybody had a smile on their face. And I was like, what is this? Like, if you told me to stay after my old job, I'd have been like, you're crazy. Why would I stay an extra hour to tell people to come work here? But it was amazing. I met my boss, Ira Sharp, who I think you both have talked to before, during that career fair. So I wasn't there for marketing, but I was there for quality. And, Ira got promoted to what my position is now. He remembered speaking to me, brought me in for an interview, and, we hit it off from there. And then, I always wanted to do teaching, and marketing is basically teaching people, teaching grownups, teaching, engineers how new products work. So it fit right in my wheelhouse. It fulfilled some of my dreams. I don't know if I'd really want to go to a class of like 10th graders right now. I'm sure that's not great, but sometimes adults could be 10th graders, so it's not all bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, as a side note, it's a really positive, I would say, like, it's a big green flag when you have a company that hosts a career fair like at their facility. You know what I mean? Because you get to see the employees, you get to interact with them, I think, like, that's a really interesting experience. And I think, like, more companies should take that approach, in my opinion, because I think, like, getting the tour of the facility, obviously once you are officially interviewing, you typically get that, but getting that beforehand without any, I would say, like, commitments is really nice.
Yeah, I'll say one thing too about that. Coming from the defense industry, it was a very large company I worked for. I think we had 10,000 employees in the U.S. or something like that, maybe even more. And I had only ever met the VP of my section twice. And it wasn't really, I wouldn't call it a meet. We had, he was in front of everybody talking. When I went to the career fair at Phoenix Contact, the very first person greeting us at the door was the president of the Phoenix Contact USA, Jack Naylor,
Wow.
shaking every single person's hand, welcoming them to the company. So, like, from the start, Phoenix Contact was put right in the door. I was like, this is an awesome place to work. And it still continues to be that way. Jack is a fantastic leader of our company. He'll learn your name. He's an amazing guy. He'll have your name down probably in like a week of working there. you'll see him in the halls. He'll say hi to you. He remembers all these details. It's just a company culture that's unmatched, and I love working here.
That's really cool. It's definitely not something that you'd see in most places. So that's really cool. Well, moving on, I guess, to the to your start at Phoenix Contact. So you said you got involved in safety, right?
That's
So
right.
you were a product manager for safety devices, field engineer. What was the role?
So at Phoenix Contact, we called a product specialist, but essentially in any other company would be a product manager. So I was responsible for safety here in the US. So safety relays, configurable safety relays, safety PLCs, going through all of that stuff. So it was a truly intriguing time to come in. Phoenix Contact was just releasing a product called Safety Bridge to the market. It's a really unique technology. I won't, we're gonna have a lot of opportunities to diverge into the weeds here. So I'll spare you guys. Safety Bridge is essentially allowing you to do safety without a safety PLC. And it's a really unique pitch to the market. So I started and cut my teeth on that. And then, through the last 8 years, it's been PSR Mini, the world's smallest safety relay. Then, now we have door switches. Finally, we're coming up with e-stops. And, I'm still nose to the grindstone on safety, but now just working and broadening a bit with the rest of my team.
Yeah, and I think like safety, obviously like machine safety, just personnel safety in general, is not a topic that I feel is discussed often enough. And speaking, from personal experience in manufacturing, there's a very wide range of facilities, even in the US, right? And at a different standard, at a different, I would say, culture. And again, like I would say, like that's a word that gets thrown in fairly loosely, but I think culture is extremely important when it comes to safety. So I'd be curious to hear maybe your thoughts on, some of the things that you have seen, and also some of the ways that standards are adopted. I, speaking with you, learned that there's a difference between how US views some of these standards and how Europe views some of these standards. And I think it's important for, again, speaking from experience, I don't think that everyone has that knowledge. Could you give us maybe an idea also like of those differences and how they're applied in the two continents?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the U.S. when you think safety in the U.S., the first thing that people say is OSHA, which is the truth. When you think of safety in your workplace, you should think of OSHA, and OSHA is responsible for safety here in the U.S. But OSHA was created by an act of the government, our executive and congressional branches and legislative branches, and that was in the mid-late 70s. There's been some updates to it, but it's kind of what OSHA has as a requirement is law. And when it comes to machine safety, there's only 8 or 9 actual pieces of requirements in the document. And it's, if you're interested, it's OSHA.gov. You can go look at the standards. It's 1910 subpart O is machine guarding. So I know someone's out there fact checking me as we speak. I think it's 9, including the general standard, but it goes into a lot of stuff of like cooperage and some wheel grinding. And a lot of it is from when it initially started. There were some additions in the 80s, but OSHA has kind of taken a stance of, we're not going to incorporate all these different standards into the law. It's going to be a more retroactive type thing when it comes to machine safety. So yes.
Sorry, Zach, 1910 dot?
1910 subpart O.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Just so I can link to it.
Oh yeah, I have links somewhere. I can find it for you then, and we can send it out after we're done. But so OSHA, I mean, they do a lot of great things. I'm not. This is not a podcast to get down on OSHA or anything like that. There you go. It's in there now. So 1910. So OSHA will typically come in and visit a facility, whether there's been an accident or it's a a standard visit. And the majority of what they go after is, or what they find is scaffolding and ladders, MSDS violations, trips, falls, and hazards, those types of things. And of the top 10 that they find, usually around 9 or 10, I think this year it's number 9, is going to be your machine guarding. And typically machine guarding happens after the fact. Because what OSHA does is they have a general use clause basically that says if it's not said in our standard, you basically have to follow whatever nationally recognized standard is available. So you have standards like the National Electric Code, NFPA 79. You have, ANSI B11 standards, B1119 being the general safety standard. You have RIA, for example, the Robotics Institute Association is coming up with standards specifically for robots. So it's basically on the owner of the machine to say, okay, I'm following all these. And that's where the big difference is between Europe and the US is the the US market is the owner of the machine is responsible for safety. And in Europe, it's whoever makes the machine or the manufacturer of the machine is responsible. And that's when you get CE marking. So if I produce something in Europe, I have to put a CE marking on it, which means that I followed the machinery directive, which basically calls out two different standards, 13849 and 62061 are the two machinery standards that you can follow. Sorry, it's alphabet soup sometimes when I talk about safety. But what that means in Europe is that from pen to paper to decommissioning of the machine, the person that designs and manufactures that machine is responsible for the safety of that machine. So when you buy a machine in Europe, you're basically buying that CE marking that says that someone has done their due diligence to make sure that it's following certain standards of machine, and it comes with all the things you need to do for maintenance until the end of life of that machine. In the United States, it's not that way. You would assume that you're buying something that has safeguarding on it, but you only requirement is what the customer requires. So if I'm a purchaser and I'm looking at two different machines, one's $1,100, the other one's $1,300, and the difference is, a different door connector, maybe I'll go for the $1,100 one. But,
Right.
Hopefully that purchaser is looking at it a little bit deeper. The company is looking at it as, a requirement for what machine that they need. And that's where you get into the culture side of things. Safety is a culture thing. You need to have a functional safety management system or process in your company to make sure the machines that you're incorporating into where you're at are following your guidelines. Otherwise, you're going to end up machines that don't have any safety on them at all, or just kind of negligent with safety.
Yeah, and as you said, I think it's very tempting to, I guess, cut the corners, so to speak, on safety devices and equipment, right? Because it's something that you don't realize until obviously there is an incident, and like it's easy again, like upfront, to save on that cost. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, no one really thinks about it, but paying an extra $200 for a safety relay or something like that seems like a lot upfront. But the back end cost of an OSHA fine. So OSHA is going to fine you for whatever they find. Especially if you've been negligent or this is a recurring problem. OSHA will fine you, and then you have civil costs, lawyers, whatever happens in a civil case if that does come up. So safety can cost a lot on the back end, but a lot of people can't see it. So it's important to know what you're doing, do it right. Look at your machines, do hazard analysis or risk assessments on them, and figure out if you're protecting them the way you need to be.
yeah, and I think this connects really well to the earlier point that we talked about, which is education, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're designing the machine or installing the machine or validating the machine, you're most likely going to set the standards for the people who are going to operate that machine, right? And so they may not always have the same knowledge that you do when it comes to the automation equipment. And so it's very important to educate them on the best practices, on how to, again, I've seen many different things in my career involving like bypasses or people changing the wiring, or again, like bypassing your e-stops when it's not operating. So there's going to be a lot of things that as we said, like get cut, so to speak, in production as well. So it's really important to educate your people, I think, and set that culture where, again, the message that I've heard in certain companies is nothing we do is worth getting hurt over. And so like that's their number one priority, right? Over making product this very minute.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit before, but it's also an alignment of goals from not just the top executive level, but all the way down to the person doing the assembly. If your goal as an executive level team is no injuries, and you also have a goal of being profitable and making money and getting product out the door, you need to make sure those goals aligned all the way down, and you're not getting, managers pushing their team to be unsafe or to rush through things. Otherwise, you're not going to have alignment, and you're going to end up with safety problems on your plant floor. And before we continue, I just want to let you guys know that a random thunderstorm has approached my house, and if I lose power and drop off, I apologize. It hasn't happened, but this would be the day, that it does.
Me and Dave will have to fill in.
Oh, that's a really good excuse, Zach.
Yeah,
Zach's all prepped, and he's like, I've only got 26 minutes in me, guys. So in about 90 seconds, when I go black and you can't get to me, it's the thunderstorm. I like it. That's
exactly.
the best excuse we've had live yet. Thank you, Zach.
Once you give me a hard question, my video is going to go black and I'll stop talking. So.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. But so I like the point that you had talked about, Zach, with marketing being education, and we haven't had a lot of other marketers on the show. Would you mind kind of extrapolating your thoughts on, the goal of marketing is to be education, and how you guys utilize that at PHENEXT in order to help kind of educate the market with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so when I first started, coming with an engineering background, having worked a little bit with quality, you get an opportunity to kind of tell people what they're supposed to do, and they have to listen to you. So, my first couple of visits into a customer, it was, here's a product, it does this, this, and this, it costs this much, how much can I sell you? And that's not marketing. That's, first of all, that's being very naive of what people are doing. And no one wants to be told what to do either. So when you come from a place of educating, and honestly, it's more about asking questions. So if I come in with an agenda and say, hey, I want to push this product here, buy this, buy this, buy this. A lot of times I've found when I go out and talk to customers, it's not, hey, here's my newest widget. Maybe that's why we got the meeting. My local salesperson did a good job, hunting and finding things, but I'll ask more questions than I'll answer most of the time. I'll say, hey, what are you guys doing? What, are you using an existing control system for this? How are you doing that? I see you have multiple e-stops here. Are they connected together? And the more you listen to the customer, you can get a sense for what their culture is at the company, but then you can also get a sense of, what are their pain points? Why are they doing multiple e-stops? A lot of times you'll see safety added to a machine because something happened, or a customer got upset about something, or, what have you. So getting that background story and figuring out what caused the problem, or what was causing the problem, you can start to work for a solution to really help somebody understand maybe what's going on. It's good to have a different set of eyes at looking at different things. And then the more I got into it, the more I saw, Vlad, I know you said everything, you've seen everything, but I've seen some really terrible safety circuits in my life, and some that I, immediately told the people I was unwilling to go and visit, with what they were doing. So there's times where I can say from experience, you probably don't want to do that, because, you're thinking about it this way. It's a very valid way of thinking about it, but you also forgot A, B, and C, or D, E, and F, or when the customer gets it, they're probably going to use it this way. And when it comes to, just getting the knowledge out there, specifically with safety, it's been good for me, because there's a lot of the knowledge gap within the US about safety and requirements. And it's honestly something that people are uncomfortable talking about. So that has really opened the door to a lot of different customers, and just wanting to have a conversation. A lot of times it's just, hey, I have this silly question. Why do I need to be category 4? Or what does category 4 even mean? Or why is there stop category and safety category? And what's the difference between the two? So
can you elaborate a little bit on those? Because I'm like, to be honest with you, I've been following the standard, but I couldn't tell you exactly why, we're going to those categories and what it truly entails.
So the category system was 954, which is the old standard for safety. It's still used in 13849, which is the international version of safety. And B1119, I believe, still references category, but essentially there's category B1, 2, 3, and 4. B1 and 2 are all single channel designs, so no redundancy. And then 3 and 4 are redundancy, either with some monitoring or with everything being monitored. So that's the difference between safety category. And then stop category is a 0. Stop category 0 is instantaneous loss of power. So I hit an e-stop. all the power removes from my machine. Stop category 1 is delayed loss of power. So I hit an e-stop, I have some type of timer and a braking system that'll stop motion, and then I remove power. And then stop category 2 is no loss of power, but just a braking system. So essentially, it's not an emergency stop. It would just be a delayed stop with no loss of power. So that's the difference between those.
And why would you, I guess, like, why would you care as an end user, or let's say a machine manufacturer, about the different categories? Or how
Well,
would you
so
pick? Like, it's based on your evaluation of safety?
yeah, I mean, it's referenced in some of the standards too. So they'll talk about a stop category 0 versus a category 1 and where it's practical and when you need it. The biggest thing is it'll tell you how to design your machine in some cases. So if I have a large, massive rotating object, an industrial washer or a huge flywheel, and I hit an e-stop and just remove power instantaneously, the inertia of that wheel is going to continue for a long time. And I won't actually achieve a stop for a very long time, depending on how fast it was moving. So in many cases, a stop category 1, a delayed stop with some type of braking on it, is a much better stop than a completely uncontrolled stop. So that's kind of why we do that category. Then the other categories, and the reason they come up together is because it's usually safety and category, and you have to define which one you're talking about. But single channel versus redundancy is a way to ensure hardware fault tolerance on your machine and in your circuits. So it basically is how good am I designing it from a practical standpoint, not from a component standpoint, but from like an engineering design standpoint.
I mean, today, would you ever recommend single channel designs in 2021? I guess I personally, I think from what I understood, they're grandfathered in if they're like at a facility, but once you make modifications, you have to go to dual channel design, right?
So that's you're bringing in a whole other standard, and I know we have 30 minutes in already, but I will say that there is a grandfather clause within the process industry about maintaining single channel, and I would say to say that single channel doesn't exist or can't be done would be my answer to that would be, well, what was your risk assessment? So if your risk assessment says that the risk of somebody getting hurt is very low, or the chance of the machine getting to a dangerous situation is very low, then oftentimes you could find yourself where you just need a simple e-stop with one channel to a safety relay going to a motor starter. It might be a very slow moving, I don't know, a bubble machine, for instance. Maybe somebody gets stung in the eyes a little bit, or if you're doing a very slow like let's say it's a lacquer type machine, right? And you're just kind of spraying some lacquer on something, and it's not very intensive, nobody can really get in, and then a stop cat or a category 1 system might be okay. But it all comes down to your risk assessment, and then the risk graph that you walk through, and what you can do with it.
No, I mean, like, I have many questions on safety because it's an interesting topic again, and having like an expert in that domain is really interesting. Like I've said, I've seen many different things, and I've implemented safety circuitry, but again, like some of these standards are not, I guess, like complete knowledge to me, right? So
yeah, well,
it's good
I'll tell you what, when
something.
you guys get to episode 30, because I know you'll get there, I'd be more than happy to come back on and we can take a specific machine safety topic, and I'll dive in deep with you guys. We'll go a full hour. I mean, the training I typically give for safety from Phoenix Contact is a 2-day training. So yeah, we go through a lot of stuff.
We will make you regret that offer, Zach.
Hey, anytime to talk about safety, I will never regret. I mean, there's times where people have to tell me to stop talking. So I will never, ever regret being on anything.
No, I was going to say one of the reasons why I think you're very special is because you not only, maybe it's because you're talking about safety in a positive light, right? Yeah. Maybe it's the fact that you're willing to say that you spent 8.5 years working in safety, whereas I feel like most of the time in industry, folks make jokes about safety or about OSHA. One, it is obviously very important, and it is here to help make sure that people don't die. And is here because people have been seriously injured or died in incidents in the past. So,
it has a bad rap from both sides too. I mean, people don't like paying for it, but also operators on the floor sometimes see it as a frustration. Man, they put this gate in, I can't get my work done now. Now I have to bypass stuff. So it can be from both sides. And to me, the best safety circuit is one that you hardly ever use, that you never see, right? And it doesn't interrupt anybody's workflow at all. That's like the ideal circuit. And then, nobody gets hurt. The operators aren't looking for a way around it. They're not trying to get through it or make it their day better. It should be done in a way that makes everybody's work better and safer.
Absolutely.
Dave, did you have a follow-up to that?
I did. So I like Vlad, I think I have many follow-ups, but I feel like we should leave some of the safety questions till episode 30 when everyone comes back in 8 or 10 weeks or 11 weeks for episode 30, also with Zach, who is in addition to the first person to give us the best excuse of why we may lose him, also the first person to call out his second episode. So thank you for that, Zach.
I'll shoot my shot any day, man.
No.
I don't know. I could do. I'll be on it for episode 40 too. What do you want to talk about on episode 40?
I don't know. Episode 40 is so many episodes away. We've got many episodes to fill between now and 30, much less now and 40. But
I know.
I would like to take at least a few minutes and talk about the emblem of the shirt that you're wearing and that little very hard to find kind of starter set behind you and what you guys are doing with PLCNext. Can you kind of give everyone who is not initiated with the PLCNext fandom and craze that feels like has had this groundswell of support in the last 6 months or a year, kind of an update on what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. And this is where the education part comes in, because I'm not trying to sell you on it. I'm just trying to tell you what it is in the easiest way possible. So PLCNext is an open PLC platform. And when we say open, we truly mean open. It is a IEC 61131 programming language controller. So if you're used to doing ladder logic, or you want to do, structured text, or you want to do flowchart, or you want to do function block diagram, you can do that on a PLCNext. So it's just standard industrial controller. But when we say open, we really mean three different things. We mean that it's Linux, it's IIoT ready, and it's revolutionary. So when I say Linux, I mean that it's actually a Linux box as well. So out of the box, it's got Yocto Linux on it. You can program in C#, Python, whatever you want to your heart's content. You have full access to the Linux kernel, and you can make it your own Linux box. Just like I always see these young programmers coming out of college that have had access to Arduinos and Raspberry Pi, and I think what I would have done, and just killed to have that time when I was in college. And now you can come and use those skills that you learned. Maybe you programmed your first robot in C#. You can come and do that and upscale directly into industry now, because you have a Linux box that's hardened for industrial capabilities. Plus, it has I/O connectivity on it, so you don't have to worry about finding a way to get I/O on it. We say it's IIoT ready because it is IIoT ready, and when we say that, we mean it's ready to connect to the cloud. I mean, Industry 4.0 is here. Buzzwords galore. Everybody wants to get their data to the cloud, and the hardest thing to do right now is existing PLCs, existing PACs, legacy systems. It's very difficult to take that and get it into the cloud that you need. And with PLCNext, we've enabled function blocks that allow you to do it right on the software. PLCNext Engineer is the free software, by the way, for programming it. So you can go and download that from phoenixcontact.com. You can, free is always good when it comes to programming. So you have those function blocks. You can do it through Linux too. So we have guides on the PLCNext community, which is www.plcnext-community.net. There's guides on how to get to Azure, AWS, Google IIoT. I know they're working on Alibaba Cloud right now. So we want this to be future facing and getting out there into the IIoT realm. And then the last part that we talked about was revolutionary. And the reason it's revolutionary is, one, because of the first two things that we talked about, because you really couldn't find something that would do that in a PLC form factor existing currently. But also it allows you to do that IEC 61131 and the high level language computation side by side. So let's say I have existing engineers that are used to doing ladder logic, they want to do all their programming in that. You can do that and the high level language integration either through a third party app, or going in through the Linux. You can do it that way and basically have new generation, old generation of engineering working side by side, working to a similar goal. And it's really opened up a lot of different doors. Like there's things that you don't think that you couldn't, it's hard to explain, things that you didn't even know you couldn't do because you just couldn't do them and you never thought you could, that you can now do on a PLC. I mean, that we have customers sending data directly to a cloud and then immediately showing it on an iPhone, so they get status. They could be out kayaking or something like that and get status of a machine. So, and the big push for us, honestly, the last 18 months has been tough for everybody, but in industry, it's been a lot of work from home, remote maintenance, not allowing people into the facility, only having certain people out there. And IIoT has only been pushed harder and harder through our industrial capabilities. So the ability to have a PLC that sends information out to the cloud so that you can see what's going on and honestly see from your email or from a dashboard you have set up on AWS and maintain and see all your machines. Not just at one plant, you can have several plants reporting in if you're using AWS or Azure. So, I mean, I think that's why it's got a lot of people, jumping on board, because when we say open, we really do mean open. We want you to take this. We want you to be a Linux person and use this, but we also want that IEC 61131 minded person to use this as well. So it's a little bit of everything for everybody.
And one important point I do want to, discuss. Well, the first point I would like to discuss in a little bit more detail that you've mentioned, it's the accessibility, right? So now that you've got the PLC that you can program in C#, you said Python, in these higher level languages that people, let's say, learn outside of traditional PLC programming, I think you're opening up the candidate pool for, again, your engineers, your like plant support personnel, to a much larger population, right? Like, so in the past, you'd have to be trained in, let's say, like ladder logic, and that's the only thing that we learn. And you have to really understand I would say, like the low level hardware, versus now it becomes a lot more accessible. And I can, like, for example, I can speak from experience. Again, I learned on C, right? So C++, let's say, with the added classes and a lot of features, but in a traditional electrical engineering sense on C. So even when I write ladder logic per se, I still convert it in my head from C to ladder logic, right? Yeah. So I think like having the ability to program in the native language of choice. And again, I think this goes back to having just the tools, right, required. You can still program in ladder logic if that's what you learned. Yeah. And again, people will be brought up through like different, again, if you come through maybe a technical school and you learn ladder logic as the first language, then you're probably going to think in that more than in C or Python. But a lot of engineers are taught in those languages. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of industry shifts are going to happen in the next 5 years to a decade, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely, Vlad. I mean, just to reiterate your point, back in 2019, we got a summer intern. So my coworker, Yuri Chemarelli, who may be watching, he may not be watching, but he's our PLCNext guru. He's our guy when it comes to control here in the US. He hired an intern, and the intern was a comp sci major. And, I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody hiring a comp sci major into, a traditionally electrical engineering role, especially for control. And, we talked, the first time we talked, I was telling him, so, what are you used to programming in? Have you done any ladder logic, Rockwell type stuff? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, what is ladder logic? We sat him down, and like you said, Vlad, I mean, it's experience. I mean, his whole experience was in high level language. He knew Python, he knew Java, he knew C. And so like him just sitting at a Rockwell machine and going through and doing ladder logic, because that's what we do a lot of our demos on when we're talking about our IO concepts, is, he really struggled. And he was able to by the end of the day, he was able to get basically a contact to open, right? And then we said, hey, I know why Yuri hired you. First of all, I wouldn't have let him do it without, Yuri passing it by me first, but I know why he did this. And it's to prove a point. And we gave him essentially that starter kit back there. And we said that we have a trade show coming up called Pack Expo, and we want to do something really cool to show off just, how open this is. And so we spitballed for a bit, and he, I think Yuri came up with it is, hey, let's do the, you compare two images and you do the what's different in the picture. So he went on and he found a free to use, basically, I think it was C, a free to use C already developed, photo hunt app, essentially, put it on the Linux side of the machine, and then added some of his own code to make things work. We loaded up some Phoenix Contact images, and we had a photo hunt at Pack Expo running on PLCNext. And I think he got done with it in like a week. The whole thing was completely finished in a week, including, wiring things up. And to me, that's absolutely nuts. You send somebody out in the industry, typically the first 6 months on the job is you're teaching them how to learn the new language that they have to use, because whatever they learned in school was inadequate or they don't use it. And now you can have somebody coming out of school, and I believe he was a junior at the time, coming out and programming a machine to do things that we never thought were possible. I mean, we have another employee, Mohammed Hashmi, who's now a full-time employee with us, but he developed a Pong game using, I think it was 64 LED lights. He individually wired each LED light to an IO card and imported a Python-based Pong game. And you can go on our, I'll send you guys a link. You can go on to our LinkedIn. We have videos of people playing Pong on a PLCNext using just LEDs and some IO. So it truly is remarkable. That's when I said, you don't know the things that you can't do because you never were able to do them. This is the ideas that we've had where it's like, what could we do? And honestly, everything's open now because we have these high level languages in there. You can do whatever you want. I mean, and you have the experience of the Arduino and the Raspberry Pi students coming in. I mean, really, whatever you want to try and do now, the sky's the limit. Or should I say the cloud is the limit?
No, absolutely. And that's another very important, I guess, idea I haven't thought about, but we're going to benefit, I feel, from a lot of these repositories of libraries, right, that are available in the traditional software engineering space, that I feel, again, in controls, for one reason or another, maybe that machines are so custom, there's not that much sharing of code, right? So when you go to a new site or a new facility, there's rarely some repository that you can pull, let's say, a tank control scheme from, or even like a PID loop that's specific to a process. But I think a lot of those problems have been solved in the traditional software space. And so now, with having these PLCs that can access those libraries and use them, you'd be able to much more easier access them and utilize them in application. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be saving you time and money at the implementation stage, but also in many other areas.
Yeah, I mean, it's beyond just simple machine building too. And I don't want to throw shade by saying simple, but if you go to the process industry too, the OPAF initiative that's happening right now, OPAF, and the OPAS group that are working towards that. I mean, they're trying to find a way to make independent hardware so that you can take off-the-shelf hardware and work wherever you want, whatever you want, and do your DCS control platform that way. And 10 years ago, you would have said something that, and people would have laughed you out of they would have laughed you off the property and said, "This it's absurd. We're never going to go open source. We're never going to do any of this stuff." That's incredibly insane. And it's happening. It's happening right now. And if you're not getting on the open train, you're probably going to be left, to sit and do whatever you could do. But everybody wants to be open. Open source now, it used to be a curse word. Open source. People would be like, "Oh, I can't believe you're going open source." There's security vulnerabilities. There's a million things. But if you're open source and you have a well-dedicated group behind it, I mean, you're going to find vulnerabilities faster than any closed source, product you could find. You're going to have updates constantly going out. You're going to have a huge user base putting in new things, doing new ideas, developing new products. I mean, it literally is going to take off faster than you could probably think about it. And that's what we're really looking forward to and what we're starting to see already with PLCNext.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Dave, what do you think?
Yes. So I like what you're saying, Zach, and Vlad, I agree with what you're saying. I certainly see a lot of people And be it machine builders or be it SIs, build more repos and libraries of code that works well so that they can reuse it. And more tools like Zach is talking about and PLCNext behind him are going to give us opportunities to be able to easily use that, as opposed to maybe we're just copying and pasting in and out of something like an Excel spreadsheet over and over again. And so I like that. So I've got a question for you, Zach.
Yeah, sure. This is when the thunder is going to strike.
It is when the thunder is going to strike, because this may be the toughest one yet.
All
But
right.
no, so you talk a lot about marketing being education, and you talk about what PLCNext is doing. How has the marketing, how has the education, how has the end user community taken to what you guys are doing with PLCNext?
That's a really good question, Dave. I mean, it kind of mirrors what I was talking about before, where, you know, we started off on this product feature benefit type thing. And, you know, traditionally when you're looking at PLCs, people want to know, okay, how fast is it? You know, what kind of CPU is on it? You know, how many IO can you connect? What interface does it use? What protocol is it on? And it's almost been like teaching people how to think about things differently. So we get those questions, and we have answers to all those questions. There's different modules, there's different things. But the real question is, what are you trying to do? Or what is your PLC not doing for you today that you wish it could? Right. And that's an Ira quote there. He loves that. And it's true. If you think about it in what you're currently doing, you're going to miss what you could be doing. So let's think about things you could be doing and find ways to get there, because the limitations are now completely stripped off of what you're doing. There's no longer you know, I'm confined by ladder logic, or I can only do structure or structured text. It's now, what do I actually want to be doing, and how can I find a way to do it? And to us, that has been really the educational piece to the field and to people using control is take the shackles off, think about things a different way. How can your controller be better for what you're doing? Like, a lot of times you build your system around your controller and its limitations. Now let's open up the limitations, and what could your system do? What if you had, you know, a million hours and unlimited technology? What would you do with your controller? Like, and not even your control, what would your machine do? You know, a lot of people are saying, I'd love to be able to remote in and do this. Cool. Well, you know what? There's an app on PLCNext that lets you VPN in, and it's our MGuard app. That's fantastic. You know, there's a million different things that you could do, and that's really been the educational piece for us is trying to get that engineer that's been beat down for the last 25 years saying, no, you can't, or you must do it this way, to say, you know what, maybe I could do it a different way, or let's look at things a little differently. Or, you know, that guy that's coming out, or that gal that's coming out of college with a comp sci degree saying, hey, you know what, maybe I will go into industrial and do like controls. Like, that sounds really cool, because the hurdle before was, oh, you're comp sci, we're gonna have to reteach you everything. Right. And now I have somebody come in, I don't know Python, I don't know, you know, I don't know JavaScript. I don't know it very well. I know a little bit, enough to make me dangerous. But, you know, somebody comes in and is like, hey, I have this idea, we can do it this way. If I'm a traditional 61131 person, I'm going, yeah, let's do that. You know what I mean? I have this part done. Let's see how we can do this part and put them together. And that's really been the educational piece for us is, you know, oh, take off the blinders. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. And I think for me, if I may add to, I
Mhm.
guess, a list of important changes, and you mentioned this earlier, but it's data. And I think, like, you know, the real next push is being able to collect data that actually impacts your business operations, right? And allows you
Mhm.
to either optimize your process, solve certain, again, like quality or safety challenges. But ultimately, I think it's innately, I would say, like, difficult with the current systems in place to funnel data at the rate that it's growing, right? So
Oh, yeah.
again, if you have a few points of IO, like, it's not problematic, but once you start getting every sensor that you want to send to your database, it becomes, I would say, like, again, from personal experience with traditional systems,
Yeah.
very complicated.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You know, you talk about that, Vlad, and that's something I see a lot of is people saying sensor to cloud, which is, you know, for home use, my air conditioning unit goes right to the cloud. out to my phone and I can see it, and that's great. And there are going to be practical uses for that in industry. And, but right now the infrastructure is such that if I try to do that on, an ethylene cracking plant, and I did it with every, sensor I had in the field, that the amount of data from those sensors just going to a cloud probably wouldn't work right. So
Right.
you have to think about things and how am I going to serve that up? Do I need just an edge device there to gather this data? Do I already have an existing supervisory system, a PAC, a DCS that has all this data? Now I just need to find a way to funnel that data to the cloud. Can I add new data in that I couldn't before? And that's kind of where we're finding, this way around. I saw a question in here. Some people are saying, what happens if you have a customer that's spec'd in hard on a PLC? We face that all the time. Honestly, we're usually not the first choice that people think of when they think PLC. We're trying to change that, but there's some things that a Rockwell or a Siemens controller or just can't do. It won't let you natively go to a cloud. I know they're getting better at that. I think Siemens, I just saw, had something come out, but as they're getting better at it, we can, and so we can just be a part of that. Like, we don't have to be your controller. Maybe we're just the piece of your controller, that edge device that enables something to the cloud. And so we can get in and really help out where there are problems right now. And then as you get down the road and you have more opportunity, maybe someone sees that PLCNext and goes, hey, you know what? I saw that on a machine before. I'm okay with that being in here. And then we have other companies like Yaskawa that's partnered with us, and they're putting PLCNext on their future platforms. So their whole future platform is going to be PLCNext. So it's a lot of the finding places where it fits. I know I'm not going to convert somebody completely over to one control system, especially if it's a huge, if it's a huge already held PLC account. I don't imagine I could walk in, with a 2152 hardware over there and say, hey, this does this, this, and this. Let's convert the whole machine. That's kind of a pipe dream. But then again, we've had instances where we said some of the things it could do, and they went, you know what, take this other stuff out. That's what we want to do. So it works both ways.
If I may add, I guess on that same question, I guess having worked for end users, right, that use that machinery, at the end of the day, I think people sometimes like focus too much on maybe some of the negative aspects, and the common feedback that I get is, again, I use that example, like the guy in the third shift does not know how to program this new hardware that we're going to put in our facility. Well, on the flip side, again, as we discussed, there's going to be many benefits that I feel outweigh that negative, right? There's going to be people that you can hire immediately because there is a shortage of engineers available that can support and work on the system, right? So it's always, I think, like evaluating at the end of the day some of the changes that are going to happen. It's obviously not going to be from one day to the next, but you have to see, I feel, the entire picture. And I wouldn't say it's a short-term play. It's more of a long-term like decision that you get these tools deployed so that your engineers can start using them. And again, you're not going to start using everything on day one, but you're going to allow them to, first of all, experiment what makes sense for your facility. You're going to see what like that specific machine brings. And I think, like, again, it's just important to consider everything when it comes to making that call. And as you said, it's not going to be, let's just convert everything and see what happens. It's going to be like a gradual rollout. Like, let's experiment with this, see how it works, see what kind of things we can use, what applies to us. And then if that makes sense, you're going to make the changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think that this is great conversation. I would like to point out, because we've talked a bunch about computer science majors coming into the field. So I have absolutely in the past worked with people either fresh out of a computer science degree or a couple of years out of a computer science degree. I find that their ability to program is generally a lot higher as opposed to someone who comes in and, let's say, learns ladder logic and then tries to learn many of the other languages. And it is easier to teach someone who understands how to program, how to work in the industrial sector and what a manufacturing facility does. And then it is basically a black box with processes. And if they understand the processes, they can appropriately code into the environment. And so I have had very few issues with bringing, computer science, computer engineers into the industrial space. And as we were talking about before, I think we're going to have to find ways to entice people who have much better programming skills than anyone other than Vlad in this conversation, into the industry, because we're absolutely going to need to find ways to continue to expand the groups of people working in industry in the near future.
Absolutely. And for instance, my son's at STEM camp this week, so science, technology, engineering, and math. And I think tomorrow they're doing something with an Arduino. Like, it's something I would only ever have dreamed about. And I know he's going to come home and he's going to want to program, and that, to me, that's terrific. And then, I can show him, we might put something on the PLCNext and say, hey, it's the exact same thing. And that's it. You're only opening yourself to more experienced programmers, more things that you can do, and a more capable facility by doing this.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that. So I've got a couple of kind of like rapid fire questions for you, Zach, as we're getting
Lightning
close
round.
to lightning round.
Okay,
so
really.
are PLCNext starter kits available if people are interested in them?
So I believe that there are some still in stock on one of our online vendors. Allied Electric has some of them. They were in stock when I checked last week. Much like the rest of everybody, there is a drain on hardware right now. There's a lot of manufacturing happening, and we are seeing a little bit of the slowdown in deliveries. But we are trying our best to make sure that we can get these produced and out to people that need them. So I believe Allied Electric has those right now. You may be able to find some in some of our other distributors. So if you go to phoenixcontact.com, you can look at any of your local distributors, see if they have them in stock, or contact the local distributor that way.
No, perfect. Thank you for that. And then kind of like as a quick offshoot, do you guys manufacture in the Harrisburg facility?
Yeah, we do. So we have a number of different manufacturing centers in the Harrisburg facility. We do a lot of cable manufacturing there. We do combination type of rails for different solutions type things. We do all of most of our IPC manufacturing there as well. So all the burn-in testing and that type of stuff. So, and they're expanding right now. We are actually expanding our manufacturing facility. I think, is a long range 3-year plan that was just put up the other day, and it's only going to get more and bigger. We're probably going to have some terminal blocks manufactured there soon. So we're expanding our U.S. manufacturing capability as well. And we have a whole engineering team here as well that does design of product as well. We call it our RBU, regional business unit, but it's our engineers, literally, well, not in this house, but literally down the hall from me, from where I would normally be working. There's a whole group of engineers that come up with new ideas, like a universal I/O platform, a lot of our newest unmanaged switch, the thinnest unmanaged switch, on the market. That a lot of great ideas are coming out of the Harrisburg area right now.
Very interesting. So the next time I'm through the Harrisburg facility during a weekday, I will I'll have to most of the time I'm driving through Harrisburg, it's like 8:30 on a Friday night or like 7:00 on Sunday night, as I am heading either to or from Baltimore. But the next time I'm through on a weekday,
I'll tell you what, if you get in Harrisburg and it's at nighttime, we have a third shift. You call me, I'll give you a tour. I'll make sure you get a tour of the facility. But for anybody that's that doesn't drive to Baltimore or hasn't gone to Pennsylvania ever, if you're confused on where Harrisburg is, think of Hershey, and it's right next to Hershey. So where all the chocolate is made, we're basically a stone's throw away from it. So.
No, perfect. No, I appreciate that. So a couple other questions for you, Zach. We ask every week if people have a recommendation for a good book for other folks within the industrial ecosystem to read. Do you have a good recommendation?
I have a fantastic recommendation for you. I actually have two. So the first one is called Extreme Ownership. I don't know if you've read it before. This is more of a leadership
Jocko
type
Willink.
book. Yeah, right? Jocko. I follow Jocko on his podcast. I have 4 of his books.
He's a great guy. He's a very I'd say no bullshit inspiring guy. You know what I mean? Like really straightforward. Great guy.
Yeah, as Jocko would say, check. You're right. So yeah, he's fantastic. I found that has helped me so much in just learning how to become a leader, prioritizing what I'm doing. He has all these things you learn through the book, and the way him and Leif Babin, who's also the co-writer of it, they go back and forth between, in application from Navy SEALs, what they've done in uniform, and then also what they do at Echelon Front, which is their company where they help people in companies. And I think it's a really neat dichotomy of going back and forth and seeing the parallels between the two, and really leading from the front and the back at the same time, which is really cool. And then the second one, and I can't remember the author of it, but it's called Reinventing Organizations. And this is a book more about how organizations run in an idealized way of running organizations. And it talks about, they use a whole color spectrum on different types of organizations and how they function. But that kind of really opened my eyes to different ways of being a leader or a manager, how to talk to people, how to work. And then also it makes me see, when I go out to other customers or I'm educating somebody in the field, maybe how they are approaching things differently based on their leadership structure wherever they're working at. So it helps me to find, one, where I can be the most productive in my company and be most productive in my group, and enabling my employees to do the best they can, but also then enabling people within their own organizations to see beyond, kind of the, if you will, the horse blinders of maybe that's been put on them, and see different ways of talking within their organization, and finding ways to get to that person that's going to make the decision. So it's a fantastic book. Make sure you're not getting the French, unless you like French. I think it was originally written in French and then translated. It's Reinventing Organizations.
I was about to ask, because I did find the French version first.
Are you going to read it in French, Vlad?
Probably not.
Okay, so Vlad does speak French.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you were aware of that. It wasn't just it wasn't a joke of any strange language, Zach. Vlad does speak French.
So I'll go with the name here. I just found it. I looked it up. You can probably see the glow on my screen. So it's Frederic Laloux. I think Lalaux. Did I pronounce that right? Sounds right.
But the English version, it's different authors that I found, right? Arthur Young.
Yeah, so it had been translated by, exactly.
Okay, cool, good. I put the link in the social media for anyone who's interested. Oh, it's an interesting book. I guess based on your description, I'll pick it up.
Thank you, Zach.
Definitely.
And then one last question on my side. If someone has missed the last hour and hasn't heard you talk about safety, hasn't heard you talk about PLCNext, can you kind of give us the summation of, who should reach out to you guys at Phoenix, who your ideal client is, who you're looking to help?
Yeah, so let's give a 30-second elevator here. So if you're in industrial technology and you're looking to change the way you do things, you want to be a leader within your company, you want to do things the right way, and you want to get into Industry 4.0, reach out to us. We have all types of automation control. I mean, we're typically known for power supplies, terminal blocks, relays, but you name it, we probably have it. So it definitely, any industrial application, reach out to Phoenix Contact. We have local salespeople all throughout the world, and we'll help you get to your solutions and make your machines better.
We're going to have to get better at our sales pitch, Vlad. Like this was the best. Ira, I don't know if Ira or who else at Phoenix is listening, but you need to get this man on a large screen television and give him a raise for
I'll
that
tell you what,
sales pitch.
If you go to YouTube right now, we have on our YouTube channel a series called the Control Cabinet Classroom, which me and my partner in crime, Karen, and also Jeremy Valentine, we do an educational series. So I'm already kind of on a big screen, depending on how big your monitor is. But you can always check out new episodes of that. We got some more coming up soon.
Where can we find it on YouTube? What's the name?
It's on the Phoenix Contact USA YouTube page, and it's got its own playlist called the Control Cabinet Classroom.
I love that.
I think the blooper reel, I think, has the most views out of anything, but there were way more bloopers than we actually put on there. When it gets hot,
reel is always the best.
I sweat through my makeup when I get very hot, so they had to redo a lot of stuff.
Oh, that's amazing. No, I appreciate it, Zach. Vlad, do you have any other last questions?
Well, I've got many, but I think we're definitely over time, Zach. So I really appreciate you coming and talking to us. I think we'll definitely take you up on a extended discussion on safety.
Yeah.
We can, even set up some kind of a marathon as the 30th episode, since you've already committed to it. It's going to be up to us to create the format, but
Yeah. Hey, anytime you guys want to have me, this has been wonderful. It's been an excellent. The hour flew by, and I love to talk. So you want to do anything? If I could ever travel, in the next couple of months, I think we're opening back up for travel here. I know Canada doesn't want to have us yet, but and that's just they won't open the border to me because I tried to go fishing this year and I couldn't go fishing. Unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to miss that trip. But yeah, anytime you guys want to talk about anything, I'm more than happy to be a part of this. So.
Really appreciate it. Thank you again,
Yeah.
Zach. And thank you, everybody who's watching.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Take
Thank
care.
you, everyone. We will catch you guys next Wednesday, same time, same place.
Take care.